Hi, I'm Scott Wynn. Welcome to my shop. Today I want to demonstrate the use of the router plane, and more specifically the use of this rod when using the router plane. A lot of people don't really know what this rod does. It's extremely handy, and in fact it's kind of genius, frankly. When I figured it out, and it was in the instructions, and I could have read those instructions a long time ago. When I finally figured it out, it's just brilliant. Along the way, we'll also take a look at the side rabbet plane. This is the Stanley number 79. They had a couple different versions of this, and there's also available Japanese side rabbet planes, of which I have a couple of versions of. And also we'll take a look at the Dovetail saw, also called Stair Saw, short blade, depth adjustable. This is one version. There's one or two other versions. This is made out of a piece of old handsaw blade, which I broke out and re-sharpened the teeth. So one of the big jobs that the router plane was used for centuries was cutting the housing for what's called a housed stair. Now, a housed stair, instead of being mounted on triangular blocks cut out of a solid stringer, it was routed into the side of a piece, and then the tread and riser, already previously fitted together, would be inserted into that housing. And then the craftsman, he'd be underneath the stairs, because usually the stringer was already mounted to the wall, as was the other stringer. He would come in from underneath, coat these with glue. He'd have a bucket full of these wedges, drive them up tight, and that would hold the stairs. So to lay the stair housing out, we use a template. This template's very similar to what you would use for a power router. Bearing on a power router would follow a template. This is only a 1/4 inch thick because of the saw that I will use. It makes it easier to get that registration. The first thing about the template is we have to put a runner on it, and this runner slides along the bottom of the stair stringer, the stringer being the part on the wall that we cut the housing into. And then this line represents the intersection of the rise and run. So the riser runs from 7 inches to 10 inches from here to this mark over here. So we put a line, and that happens to be about 1 3/4 from the bottom edge of the stringer. That works out pretty well with this style and this rise and run of tread. This someplace in here will be the top edge of your stringer, depending on your design. You usually want at least an inch and a half at the top, usually, but that's up to the design. So this line doesn't represent anything in particular. So the first thing we do is pick our runner. You can see this is Paris scrap. I think I've used this before for this very thing. And we just mark a reference line on its width. And normally I do this in a slightly different position, but if you set both of them on the bench, you get pretty good registration. So that's our reference line, the bottom of the stringer. And then we mark that 1 3/4 line, which is the intersection of the rise and run. Put a line there. And set our panel gauge, which we can adjust with some light taps, or a small hammer works. Okay, make sure you have that on the edge of the template, not the edge of your bench. And then we set our framing square on our rise and run line until we have 7 inches and 10 inches, which is our rise and run. And we adjust it and hold its position using stair nuts. Okay. I'm going to put this roughly in the center. Run our lines all the way to the edge of the template. Now our tread is 1 inch, which is pretty standard. So we'll mark that line. Our riser is 3/4, also pretty standard. And I'll mark that line. Now, in the housed, this is called a housed stair, or housed stair tread. It's held in place and drawn up tight by the use of wedges in behind. So I'm actually going to make this, pull this back so we make sure we get a nice tight fit. I can always take a plane shaving or two off of the wedge if it's not going in far enough. These are 1/4 inch and 5 inch taper. And then let's extend those lines. I'm going to use my other square because it's a little easier to read, a little more accurate. Now, my pencil's a little blunt, so I'm going to pull that back a whisker. I got an 1 1/4 nosing, which is the distance the tread overhangs the riser down below. And then I have a 1 inch diameter bull nose on it. And that will be the center vertically of that. So we can extend these lines. And that is, I got to pull that back because my pencil's a little dull. Should be the center. Let's see if we hit it. Nope, it's 64th off. you know, pretty good. I'm gonna hold up there. Okay, that's good. And so this is our center point of that one. There we go. So the next thing we have to do is attach the runner. So before we attach the runner, we have to start making these cuts. And before we finish making the cuts, we attach the runner so we don't lose the positioning of the pieces of the template. So it's kind of awkward clamp up. I like to do it by hand just because I feel like I can cut straighter with a handsaw. And this stuff cuts pretty easily. Get it out of the path of the saw. Generally cuts very fast and very well with the rip side of the saw. Now we don't want to cut all the way to the end. Now this one, let's start it with a cross cut. Switch this so we can cut the other side. Now we will attach the fence. We'll pre-drill countersinks. Because you don't want the screw sticking up. Sooner or later you'll find they're in your way. Clean those out a little bit so they don't hold the work up. So we want to keep this positioning. You don't want it slipping around. check and see if we're nicely lined up. That's pretty good. And now we can finish the cuts. So, this area here is actually pretty critical. It's transitioning to the nosing.